Catholic courses. I am Dr. Monica Migliorino Miller, Professor of Theology at Madonna University in Michigan, and I will be your professor for this course in which we will discuss Christian spirituality. We will begin in this lecture with what we mean by Christian spirituality, and then taking a historical journey through the life of the Church, surveying the most important spiritual movements and the rich diversity of the spiritual insight that has marked the history of the Christian faith. We're going to begin with the basic elements of spirituality. I mean, how is it even possible that we can have a relationship with God? Well, the first thing we need to understand, of course, is that God Himself wills to reveal Himself and wills to unite Himself to man. So God takes the initiative to show Himself to the world. We have, of course, the first commandment in the 10 Commandments, which is, have no strange gods before you. So this is a question of proper worship, the proper orientation of the human being towards the divine. And if we take a look, if we compare, for example, Judaism with their surrounding pagan culture, we see that pagan religion, ultimately speaking, is rooted in man's needs. And so shall we say, the human race is projected onto the divine world what it is that man finds most important. And then the tribe or the cult participates in ritual, the performance of rites. That's the most important element within paganized religion, to assure that the gods will be benevolent. You tap into their creative power on behalf of the tribe, the clan, or the nation by the performance of rituals. Judaism, in comparison, truly represents a major advance in the religious thinking of the human race. Judaism provides us with the new idea. There is only one God. This is something that absolutely marks and forever colors the religion of Judaism, the one faith, the faith in the one God, namely, of course, monotheism. But in addition to understanding that there is only one God and not several gods, which of course would be polytheism, God is what we may refer to as the holy other. W-H-O-L-L-Y, holy other. In other words, God cannot be collapsed into nature. That it remains this, shall we say, healthy distinction between God on the one side, the Creator Lord, and nature on the other. But here's in some ways, the most important genius of Judaism. God wills, even though He is not to be associated with nature, God wills to create something outside of Himself, something that can stand, quote unquote, on its own, so to speak, and yet participate in the goodness of God. That something outside of God can actually be real and true and have value, and yet not be a threat to the deity. This is, of course, the lesson that we find in the first books of the Old Testament, Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 2. Most important lesson here, God does not shun matter, but indeed, how remarkable, and very different from that ancient pagan pessimism about matter. God actually delights in it. Let's, for example, if we take a look at Genesis chapter 1, in some ways, Genesis chapter 1 represents a polemic against ancient pagan religion. And we see here that everything that exists is governed by the divine mind and by the divine creative energy. That God wills that something exists outside of Himself. And then perhaps one of the most remarkable things that we find in Genesis chapter 1, over and over again, indeed 7 times, we find that the text affirms the goodness of the created order. Matter is declared good over and over again. For example, you take a look at verse number 11. God saw that it was good. The dry land appeared, and the basin of water, which he called the sea, God saw that it was good. Verse number 12. The earth brought forth vegetation, every kind of plant that bears seed, and every kind of fruit tree that bears fruit with its seed in it. God saw that it was very good. You get to the very end of chapter 1 of Genesis. God looked at everything he had made and found it very good. It's almost as if after a day's work of, painting or sculpture, God is the divine artist, and now after the artwork is finished, he's actually stepping back and looking at it and delighting in what he has created and says, very good. The other lesson that we can take away from Genesis chapter 1, creation is orderly. There is divine intention behind what we find in nature. The world that we have, the world coming from the hand of God, is not random. It is not an accident. It is not just something that happened, okay, with no explanation, no intent, and no meaning behind it. Everything that God has created has behind it a divine wisdom. Nature, moreover, in Genesis chapter 1, is definitely divinized. All right, what do we mean by that? Emptied of its divinity. There we see quite clearly a polemic, an argument against ancient pagan religion in Genesis chapter 1, to empty the world of its divine sense, to knock over, shall we say, knock down those pagan gods, where the pagan world turned the sky into a god, it turned the sea into a god, it turned the earth into a god, and so on. So we have an argument against polytheism, and let me give you an example of what we mean here in Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 to 19. Here we have the passage where God has set the lights in the dome of the sky. Well, let me read the passage for you, and then I'm going to help you understand what's behind this. God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate day from night. Let them mark the seasons, the days, and the years, and serve as lights in the dome of the sky to illuminate the earth." And so it happened. God made the two great lights, the greater one to govern the day, and the lesser one to govern the night, and he made the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to illuminate the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. God saw, of course, how good it was. Evening came, and morning followed the fourth day. What's amazing about this passage, pagan religion, the ancient pagan Semitic peoples that surrounded the Jews and certainly out into the Greco-Roman world, divinized the stars, divinized the sun, even the moon. And here we see, it's almost shocking in a way, how Genesis has this rather scientific, even rational explanation for why we have stars and sun and moon. They're to mark the seasons. They're to separate the day from the light, to illuminate the earth. They have a natural purpose. They are not gods. The God of the Jews, made all those things. So, look to him and look to creation, and we respect, we love, we delight in creation as God himself delights in it, as Genesis chapter 1 already tells us that that's the case. Everything God made is good, but we don't worship these things. So the sun, the moon, and the stars, these false gods, are put in their place. They are given, may I even use the word, a secular explanation. That is what they are for. Don't worship them. Man is made in the image of God. And this is one of the most important teachings of Judeo-Christianity, coming from the first chapter of Genesis. Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 to 27. Man is made in the image of God. So we see, first of all, that man is somehow different. Man, it cannot be simply collapsed into the general world of nature. He's singled out and has a special quality that is not given to the rest of everything else that God has made. There's been, of course, a lot of discussion over the last 2,000 years within Christianity. What does it mean for man to be made in the image and likeness of God? We have certainly here an articulation of man's spiritual principle, that man cannot simply be reduced to his physical nature. Like God, man is rational. Man is a rational creature. And so, like God, man can know rationally, intellectually, the meaning of his existence, and not just, of course, human existence, but the existence of everything else that exists in the universe. God has given then, because of this rational quality, dominion. God has given man dominion over nature. That is certainly one of the most important ways Genesis chapter 1 teaches us that man is like God. The human being can know like God what a thing is for, and then do what with it? Guide it like God to its proper end, and bring the world of nature to its completion like God.